Hello again and welcome back to the potting shed. Today I want to talk to you about fertilizing your Maidenhair Fern. Now just look at this absolute beauty. Now we've got a rare sunny day here in the UK in February, and this in the winter sunshine looks absolutely beautiful. These tiny little hair-like stems, which is where it gets its name from, look just beautiful. They're like a dark coffee colour with the little heart-shaped leaves. It's an absolute treat. The only issue is some people, including myself, find them very difficult to look after, and for good reason. They can be a little picky. They're not that difficult to look after, but they're very specific in their requirements. We're going to go over that a little bit today, but more specifically I want to talk to you about fertilizing this plant, because I made a video on this plant a while back now and it did really well. It got a lot of views and a lot of questions were regarding fertilizer. Now I didn't cover that in that video, so I thought I'd make a dedicated video regarding fertilizing these Maidenhair Ferns. We're going to talk a little bit about the care of them, but I will do a separate care video on this subject, so be sure to make sure you're subscribed if you want to catch that, and hit the bell notification, and then you'll get notified when that video comes out. But for this one, it's about fertilizing, and the reason why I didn't really mention it on the last video is because, in my opinion, they really don't need a lot of fertilizer, if any. Now this is a sort of mid shade loving plant, so it's not deep shade. It does appreciate indirect sunlight, but in its native environment in South America, it's going to be on the forest floor around the leaf litter, and it's going to have decomposing organic matter around it, which is relatively low in fertilizer load. So it's basically evolved to need relatively little requirements, and if you've got decent organic soil mix in the actual soil, that's really all it needs. Now you can get online specific fern fertilizer, and I haven't actually used it, so I can't vouch for if it's any good or not. I'll put a link down in the description where you can have a look for yourself and see what you think. But if you do use a fertilizer, I would suggest use a weak solution. Maybe dilute it 50% compared to what it says on the instructions, and it only is going to really need fertilizer maybe at the beginning of the growing season, late spring, just as it starts to grow, and then maybe only once more in mid to late growing season is probably all you need, because they don't have a massive requirement. And if you feed it too much, because of these tiny little stems and leaves, if they don't make use of that food, it's going to collect in the leaves and they're just going to go brown and crispy. And trust me, this plant does not need any excuse to go brown and crispy. Probably going to do it anyway. So don't overfeed it is what I would say about this plant. Now I'll touch on care as we're talking about it, but like I said, I'm going to go into detail on the care on another video. But it's safe to say watering is key with this plant. The main issue where people go wrong is they let it dry out. This is completely intolerant to drying out, so if you're going to do anything, give it more rather than less, and that's in opposition to what I normally say. Normally most houseplants will tolerate being dry for a little while, for a few days, and drying out completely, much more than they will being overwatered constantly. But you almost can't overwater this plant, so always err on the side of more rather than less, because if this dries out, as soon as it does, it's dropping fronds, it's going to dry out the leaves, they're going to go brown and crispy, and they're going to drop. So it's well worth having an outer pot and an inner pot. It's going to be very difficult to control the water if you don't have drainage. So what I've got in this one, let's see if I can get it out. They're such delicate leaves, you can't really pull on the plant to get it out. I'm not entirely sure I can. All right, let's just take it as read that there's an inner pot and then this is the outer pot. So when I water it, the water goes through the soil and collects in the bottom. Now it's sat right on the bottom, this inner pot. So normally I would suggest that after you've done watering, about half an hour afterwards, take the inner pot out, and pour away the excess water so it's not sitting in water. But in this case, to enable there to be a ready supply of water, as long as you don't go crazy, any water sat in the bottom, if there's maybe half an inch or a centimetre of water in the bottom, I would leave it, because as it starts to dry out, it's going to take that water back up from the bottom and it's going to be able to make use of it, and that's going to help it slow down the drying out process. And the other thing to think about is light. It does like a lot of indirect bright light, but you don't want full sun. Full sun will burn these delicate leaves instantly and scorch the leaves, and the branches will just drop off very quickly. So a bright sunny position without the full sun hitting the actual plant itself. Now, in terms of temperature, they will actually go a bit cooler than a lot of houseplants, so I wouldn't worry about that. If it's in a house, it's not going to get cold enough for it to worry. As long as it's not going below sort of 5 degrees Celsius, I think it's going to be absolutely fine. The main thing is the watering with this plant, and I would say the humidity. It's one in the same, because if it's too of a dry environment, like if you live in an area where it gets cold in the winter and you have central heating on, then the heating dries out the atmosphere, and when you have a dry atmosphere, that means that the plant dries out quicker, in which case it's going to use the moisture in the soil quicker, which means it's going to need more watering. So just bear that in mind. If you have a humidifier, this is definitely one that will benefit with that over the winter, to have it in the area of the humidifier. Keep it around other plants, that will keep the relative humidity higher. And yeah, obviously don't keep it anywhere near a radiator or a heat source or air conditioning or anything where it's going to dry out, because that will really knock it back severely. So with that said, in terms of fertilizing, don't worry too much. I would probably repot this once every 1 to 2 years anyway, and if you're going to do that, you get an opportunity to divide it maybe, because these are clump forming, so you can propagate by division, so you can remove maybe some of the plant and make additional plants if it's been growing. And as you do that, you can put in more organic soil, and that fresh organic soil will be enough food for it to keep growing happy and healthily. So that's all you need really, in my experience. Now, if you want to use the plant fertilizer, you can, but I would suggest it infrequently and in a weak solution. But let me know how you get on. I've never used the fern fertilizer myself, so if you have and you have some experience, please do let me know in the comments below. I would be interested to hear your comments. But that's it. I really do like this. Is one of my favorite ferns. This and the blue star fern, I think, is my top 2 fern houseplants. Absolutely beautiful, well worth attempting to grow if you can, but just be aware they're going to need a little bit more attention than average to keep that soil. You're really on the surface here. It wants to be touch wet all the time. If it's starting to dry out, water it again. Like I said, more rather than less with this one. I hope that's been helpful. Please give it a thumbs up if it has, and subscribe for more houseplant related videos coming along very soon. Bye for now.